Alright, hey everybody, it's me and Buster Green, and I'm dropping this video because this year a whole bunch of suspicious events have all occurred recently, and they're all focusing around the topic of the Looney Tunes, leading me to connect the dots in my head like a crazy person, and connecting these tangents, I believe there's a bigger picture here, and I want to start by saying that we are dangerously close to a world where the Looney Tunes have ceased to exist. And if you don't want that to happen, pay very close attention to my instructions at the end of this video, because I think in a month from now, we're going to have one final battle, one last chance, our only chance to save the lives of the Looney Tunes. Okay, so the last big theatrical Looney Tunes movie that came out was Space Jam 2. No one really remembers that movie anymore. A lot of people hate it, but Space Jam 2: A New Legacy dropped in the middle of the pandemic straight onto HBO Max, despite having a Max and theatrical simultaneous release. And despite being an overall shitty Space Jam sequel in a different universe than the first movie, the film overall still was profitable, making a $160 million box office against its $150 million budget. And so in the aftermath of Space Jam 2 doing good enough, 5 brand new Looney Tunes movies were greenlit, mostly intended for HBO Max. There was a Bugs Bunny movie, a Coyote Vs Roadrunner movie, a Daffy Porky movie based on those being the top 4 Looney Tunes, and then there were also 2 lower budget, more experimental movies for Sylvester and Tweety and the Tasmanian Devil. Now those movies were kind of rushed out, and it's good that they were rushed out because those all managed to come out in 2022, right before the big regime change, and they came out to mixed reviews. Now, let's talk about the 2 movies that came out before The Age of Zaslav. Now, first there was the Tweety movie, King Tweety. This movie was generally very poorly received, as it was like a misled attempt to reboot Sylvester and Tweety for modern audiences who are just too cool to ever give a shit about these characters. I do remember a lot of people raging against this movie when it came out for being super out of touch, super cringy, and trying to appeal to the same non-existent audience of weird internet kids as like the Emoji Movie was trying to appeal to. Then after that, there was the Taz movie, Taz Quest for Burger. Somehow this one was even worse than the Tweety movie, because while the Tweety movie was considered out-of-touch trash that people raged against, this one was just completely ignored. It was so bad that no one even hated it. It was just not even worth talking about, not even worth watching, and it was instantly forgotten. So I don't know if I'm ever going to check this out because there's apparently just nothing to it. Then unfortunately after that was the big year where it all fell to shit, because that was the phase shift where Warner Brothers and HBO Max went from being pushed very hard under the AT&T management to David Zaslav taking over the company, driving the company into debt instantly, and then canceling everything because he's a fucking cretin. So yeah, if you've been sleeping in a cave the past 5 years, the big picture here is that since 2022, David Zaslav took over Warner Brothers, and he's been a short-sighted, borderline criminal CEO who's been running the studio into the ground. He's taken over every aspect of the studio, merged a bunch of departments carelessly, shuttered a bunch of other departments, sold legacy assets. He'll probably go down in history for starting the atrocious and disgusting legacy of canceling completed movies for tax write-offs, even if some of those movies are good and would have made more money than the tax write-offs. On top of that, the dude has basically declared all-out war on like a majority of the WB's cartoon properties, which is insane because this was the company that owned Cartoon Network. And under Zaslav, Cartoon Network has basically been murdered, stabbed straight in the back. They lost their building, they stopped producing original properties, and older properties like Adventure Time and Teen Titans still continue to be awkwardly recycled because whatever was happening at Cartoon Network when Zaslav took over either went into zombie mode or just got ruthlessly canceled. So yeah, Cartoon Network has been effectively murdered under Zaslav, ceasing to exist, only existing in like weird memories and like weird places where it was like too established to be torn down so fast. And then like beyond that is the Looney Tunes, the cartoon kings of Warner Brothers. And for the rest of this video, I need to talk about those last 3 Looney Tunes movies that were all started after Space Jam, their overall fate, and what, if anything, can be done to rescue them. So let's start by talking about Bye Bye Bunny, which is the most mysterious of the 3 films. We know the least about it. This one also, ironically, should have been the biggest of the 5 post-Space Jam films because it was the big, grand Bugs Bunny one. This one was seemingly being hyped up to be the best of these 5 films, and now it's literally the one we know the least about. Like, as of today, there's only 4 things we really know about this film. In a perfect world, the film was planned to be released on August 22nd, 2022, like a few months after the merger, but that didn't happen. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but they completely missed their deadline. On September 16th, 2022, about a month later, a majority of the film's crew, but what's important here is not all the film's crew, reported that they had been laid off. I want to deduce based on this data and the data I have beyond that the film was therefore downsized with no intention of meeting that release date deadline, and maliciously it's possible that the film was just finished in whatever state it was in for the sake of collecting a bigger tax return on a finished product compared to the tax return they will have gone for turning in an unfinished movie. Like, I'm not sure exactly what the specifics is on the tax return law for killing a movie, but I guess the more finished the movie is, the more money you can claim back. So then 2 days later, there was an update from Cartoon Brew confirming that the film was still in production and that the layoffs were due to a big creative change where the film was changing from more of like a linear story to more of a musical than it was before. This makes me wonder that if maybe they were just like trying to humble together a half-assed musical from whatever they had finished at that time because they couldn't do the film justice. But so anyway, then our next update on Bye Bye Bunny is February 2024. Approximately 1 year ago, the film's head of story, Michael Herrera, tweeted that the film had been finished. I'm actually having a pretty hard time reassembling all the history here because most of the animators involved have somehow deleted their Twitter accounts in the past year. But then 6 months later, August 15th, 2024, it was confirmed that Bye Bye Bunny had been executed. Taken out to the backyard and shot right in the back by fucking David Zaslav. Sent off to movie Valhalla for no particular reason, but to enrich Zaslav with another fat tax cut for his fat fucking paycheck. I need to point out again that David Zaslav is literally earning more money than any other movie CEO, despite damaging his studio more than any other movie CEO, and that's kind of fucked up. By the way, I found a few more shreds of lost media for Bye Bye Bunny. I found a rough lyric track for one of the songs. It didn't really impress me though. It was just sung by one of the songwriters, so it really wasn't good. It was just lyrics. I guess Eric Baza would have redone the vocals, and then there probably would have been like an orchestra for the final version. I also found a collection of storyboards that seemingly contradict with the nice art for the movie. These were in a much less detailed style like the King Tweety movie or the previous Looney Tunes shows. Now, after this, a handful of stills from the movie finally leaked out, and I'm not sure if this movie would have been great or not, but I am incredibly insulted that a team of people apparently worked their ass off on this movie, only to get swindled off by David Zaslav and have their work set on fire for a fucking tax write-off. Can you imagine working on something for 4 years of your life, only to have some CEO come down from his ivory tower to set all your work on fire for his taxes? Like, what the fuck? If you think I'm mad already, the next story is Coyote Vs Acme. Now, I've talked about Coyote Vs Acme before on the channel when I thought the story was reaching a climax about this year last time, but potentially we're at a point now where it might have one final chance to exist right now. Now, sadly, the story of Coyote Vs Acme has seemingly grown more and more twisted since last time I talked about it. Oh, and my old video on this subject was released right before Mr. Beast got canceled for turning out to be Mr. Sociopath, so I guess that video hasn't aged that gracefully, but it's still worth checking out if you want more info on the topic, because I'm probably not going to remember all the details I said last year. So in a saner and healthier alternate timeline, Coyote vs. Acme was supposed to come out theatrically on July 21st, 2023, but Zaslav decided to do the old switcheroo and replace it with Barbie the movie, which means we could have had an alternate universe where instead of the Barbenheimer trend, we would have had Coyoteheimer, a double feature of a movie condemning explosions in the Mojave Desert up against a movie celebrating them. That kind of would have been pretty funny. Unfortunately, while the movie was initially posited as delayed, a few months later the film was updated to canceled for a tax loss on November 9th, 2023. And the film drew widespread outrage across Hollywood because, by all accounts, Coyote vs. Acme was a good fucking movie that didn't deserve it. It was a finished movie. It would have made money. Setting it on fire was insane. So all of Hollywood was just infuriated by this move. People actually canceled deals to develop films with Warner over this. And there's this haunting quote by someone that I can't find anymore, but I vividly remember it. The quote was essentially, Coyote vs. Acme was a great movie, and anyone who saw it was instantly filled with an overwhelming dread that if Warner could cancel a movie as good as that for a meager tax write-off, they would cancel anything. there was widespread condemnation of Warner Brothers, and they supposedly decided to back off from setting Coyote vs. Acme on fire at just that second. So then they played with everyone's hearts and minds and said that they were going to just sell the movie to another distributor, even though that should theoretically have cost more money than just them releasing it themselves. Now, supposedly immediately Amazon, Paramount, Apple, Netflix, Sony all jumped at the idea of purchasing this supposedly wonderful Looney Tunes movies. They were all interested in buying it, but then WB stopped them in their tracks by putting down an insane and risky price tag of $75 million to buy the film outright to release it. Now, for comparison, that's the same price that Taylor Swift put on the home video rights for her Eras tour a few months earlier when she sold it eventually to Disney+. Now, I would argue that it's possible for Coyote vs. Acme to get a box office of slightly over $1 million with good reviews and good word of mouth. So a distributor could have released it in a theater and theoretically profited off of that, but it would have been close. Now after this is where the story gets very murky. Supposedly, none of the distributors were willing to spend $75 million on it, and so they lowballed WB all the way down to $30 million, which was the publicly known value of the tax buyout. Now, I feel like WB should have seen this coming, and they should have formed more of like an auction process where they worked up from $30 million and not down to it. But somehow they got it all backwards. It was like polarity backwards. And instead of coming from a position of strength where they could have like had the buyers outbid each other up to the ceiling, they instead came from this position of weakness where everyone knew they were just trying to delete the film for a tax write-off. And then they ultimately didn't follow through with anything. Ultimately, supposedly, as some people tell the story, the film rights are still up to grab to this day, but no one is ever going to be crazy enough to pay $75 million to Warner Brothers directly to buy the rights to the movie, except for maybe a sociopath with a tarnished public image that he needs to repair. Ha 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 ha. So supposedly the film was officially murdered on February 23rd, 2024, when WB posted another $115 million in tax loss refunds. It was never confirmed, but it's widely speculated that this film was one of 4 movies included to qualify for this big of a refund. However, after that, in March and April, the film's screenwriter claimed the film was still potentially available for acquisition, just no one was willing to pay $75 million for it. Now, that kind of was it. That was kind of the end of the story until recently this year. A few recent things have moved the needle again on the story. The ball got rolling again in January 2025 when Screen Rant had an interview with Lana Condor. Condor supposedly plays a minor human supporting character in the movie, and she was devastated when this movie was brought up because, according to her, it's the finest work of her career, and it was completely buried for a tax write-off. Like, how fucked up is it that she had this one chance of becoming a huge Hollywood actress, and then WB, like, buried her, like, best, apparently, leading role here? Now, the Lana Condor thing then set off Will Forte, who was apparently the star of the film, who put out a scathing public statement reminding everyone that Zaslav committed the Hollywood equivalent of a war crime against this film, which by all accounts was a great film that everyone loved. Lastly, responding to Will Forte's leaks, someone posted a brand new screenshot taken from a screen of the film, making me incredibly curious that someone's just got to have a secret DVD of this film laying around for some such a purpose. And I always have wondered what would happen if the film was eventually leaked. Would WB be on the hook to pay back that $30 million? Would they have to release this film anyway to recoup the profits from the tax write-off? So far, none of these canceled movies have ever been leaked. They're all lost media. But then, since this event, an unfinished snippet of the canceled Scoob Holiday Haunt movie has also leaked online, which was another movie that Zaslav canceled as soon as he took power. So that brings me to the last and final movie of the post-Space Jam Looney Tunes movies, The Day the Earth Blew Up. Day the Earth Blew Up is the Porky Pig Daffy Duck movie that was also supposed to drop on HBO Max on August 22nd, 2022, same day as Bye Bye Bunny. I want to think HBO Max was originally trying to play and plan up some Bugs Bunny versus Daffy Duck double movie feature grudge match where viewers would have like access to both films and maybe like some arbitrary decision would be made about which one got more hits faster. Now, supposedly at the same time that all the other Looney Tunes movies were being like fucked around with and tortured, this one also almost got canceled. It also was temporarily renamed Bubble Brains. What the fuck is that? By all accounts, The Day the Earth Blew Up was also canceled by Zaslav, except this time some kind of a freak miracle happened. I'm not exactly sure why or how, but somehow against all odds, the film was rescued by an extremely poor, extremely obscure indie distributor named Ketchup Entertainment, a film company with less than 20 notable hits that mostly just localizes foreign films. I guess they released Hellboy 4. So the fact the film was cheap enough to be rescued by a company this small, and that this small company actually pulled it off, is a freaking miracle. And I say that we gotta support and reward these heroes for saving Daffy Duck from Zaslav's sinister grasp. Somehow this one went the distance and survived, with a skeleton crew of animators working on it, pushing it hard, and it was supposedly very well received. The film debuted at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival in France, and due to some weird deal made from that film festival, the film then immediately got a theatrical run only in exclusively the European countries of Germany and Switzerland. There, it had a box office gross of about $500,000, which is hard to conceptualize, but I want to say that's probably a failure against its $50 million budget. But I'm not sure. I don't know what an average American box office looks like for just Germany and just Switzerland. That's never been done before, so maybe it's okay. Anyway, Day the Earth Blew Up is supposed to come out later this month on Friday, February 28th. But actually, no, it's not. It's been delayed. Thank God it's been delayed, because I actually need to see Gundam GQs that day, and it's suddenly been delayed to the Ides of March. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's been delayed because there's been a lot of snow this year, and I do think it has better odds of succeeding in March. It was also apparently delayed because they didn't want to be competing against Paddington 3 and Dogman, which have also hit it big this month. But I need to state that as far as we know, this is the last Looney Tunes project greenlit under the very pro-Looney Tunes AT&T WB leadership. And this movie is basically a litmus test to see what possible fate might become the Looney Tunes, and if they still matter, if people still care, and if they still deserve to exist. I also have to further let you guys know that there is no public knowledge of any additional Looney Tunes projects or content greenlit under the Zaslav regime. So if this film fails, we will not be seeing these characters again or any new content featuring them for a very long time. Someone else would have to go on the line for the Looney Tunes, Zaslav would have to sell the Looney Tunes to another company, or maybe Zaslav would sell the entire WB studio again to another company who would maybe treat them better. But right now, with Zaslav in charge, the Looney Tunes, this is their last chance. And considering all that, even if this movie was a bona fide hit, that could potentially be a big development, because then there would be a bunch of people being like, Looney Tunes, and the only cards Zaslav would have to play at that point would be the canceled Coyote Vs Acme and the canceled Bye Bye Bunny movies, which are supposedly sitting on his desk, unreleased and unfinished. If he were to commission any new Looney Tunes projects, those would not be available for like another 5 years, so not till 2030. So if the Day the Earth Blows Up goes over well, that's our last potential chance for any kind of reversal on Coyote vs. Acme, and maybe Bye Bye Bunny too. Now, as far as the predictions of what's going to happen with this movie, it's not good. It's currently predicted this movie is going to fail at the box office. It's predicted that it's probably going to maybe get, if it's lucky, $10 million at box office, which is still a failure because it costs $15 million to produce. Lowball estimates are it might go as low as $5 million because it's got no advertising. Best case scenario, if it's really successful, maybe it'll clear $20 million. Now, if the Day the Earth Blew Up fails financially, which it's positioned to do, I think Zaslav is really going to kill the Looney Tunes, because that's what Zaslav wants to do. He wants this movie to fail, and when it does fail, it will position him to justify putting an end to the Looney Tunes and shooting them all, dipping them in the tank, and that's it. The 100-year history of the Looney Tunes will end on March 15th, 2025, with the Day the Earth Blew Up being their last creative whimper. Zaslav is really setting this movie up to fail. It's gotten basically no advertising. I've only seen trailers for it in the movie theater, and it's being exclusively pushed as just a filler babysitter movie where you can take your kids to see a movie because it's snowing out and you don't want to get them in the snow. But if this movie can go the distance, if it can defy the odds, and it can make over $30 million, up to, say, $100 million like Space Jam did, and I think that's a great outcome, and that will send a message that these characters do still matter. But it's going to be hard, since only hardcore animation fans and like internet nerds are really going to probably care about the Looney Tunes, especially as it is like, I know for me, the Looney Tunes were like a big part of my like childhood, because like reruns of the Looney Tunes were always on TV. And then you had Tiny Toons, which were apparently like a sequel to the Looney Tunes. But nowadays, just those reruns don't air like they used to. and it's really hard to like find people who like still care about the Looney Tunes. So yeah, this is literally their last shot. A lot's riding on Day the Earth Blew Up, and as we keep existing in a society where timeless American institutions are being torn down one by one, I guess I just want to end by asking right here, did you ever care about the Looney Tunes, and are you going to miss them when they're dead? Because David Zaslav is about to murder them. All right, I was Moonbuster Green. Leave a comment if you are planning to go see Day the Earth Blew Up. Good night, everybody.